Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be diving into the world of digital research.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, it's a buzzy topic, and I think a lot of people are wondering, is it really like a revolution in how we think about knowledge, or is it just a lot of hype?
Right.
So you sent us this article, How to Think About Digital Research, by Christian Sandvig and
Mr. Hargittai.
Esther Archetype. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so let's dive into that and see what they had to say.
Yeah. They do a great job of kind of laying out the challenges and the opportunities of doing research in this digital age.
Yeah.
And I think one of the first things they point out that's really interesting is that social scientists don't often talk about how they do research.
Huh.
They use this comparison to bench science,
Okay.
where in bench science, you're in a lab and there's like a very clear process that everyone kind of understands.
Like you can picture it.
Yeah, you could totally picture it.
Right.
Right. Like someone with a beaker and they're measuring things and it's very precise.
Yeah. You get the goggles, the lab coat.
Yeah. Exactly. And the process is front and center.
Yeah.
But when it comes to social science research, we don't always have that really clear picture.
We just get like the results or something.
Right. It's like what's going on behind the scenes? How do they actually get to these conclusions?
Yeah, it's kind of a black box in a way.
It is. And especially with digital research, things are changing so rapidly.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The tools are changing, the methods are changing, the nature of data is changing. It's like trying to hit a moving target.
Yeah, it's got to be tough to keep up.
It is. So it's not just about, what are the results of this research, but like, how did you even do this research? How did you get there?
Right, so it's about being transparent about the methods, too.
Totally.
Yeah.
And they call this tendency in academic writing to kind of gloss over the methods.
Yeah.
They have those really dry, methods sections that no one really wants to read.
Skip right over them. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's almost like they're trying to protect themselves from criticism rather than genuinely explain how they did the research.
Right, because, if you lay out all your steps, someone's going to find a hole somewhere, right?
Yeah, someone is always going to be able to pick it apart.
Yeah.
And that's part of the academic process.
Right.
But I think especially with digital research, there's this tendency to want to be like, oh, look at this fancy new tool I'm using
Mm-hmm.
and look at the amazing results I got, but then not really explain how they got there.
Yeah, maybe because they don't even fully understand it yet.
It could be.
Right.
Or maybe they're trying to protect their careers or, create this air of expertise.
Right, like I've mastered this thing that's unmasterable.
Exactly. So it's like this weird tension there.
Yeah, that's kind of concerning, right?
It is.
Like if we can't understand how the research was done,
Mm-hmm.
how can we really trust the results?
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's one of their main points. We need to be more open and honest about the methods we're using,
Yeah.
especially in digital research. We need to be willing to share our process, even the messy parts.
Warts and all?
Warts and all.
Okay, so transparency is key. Got it. But let's get to the heart of the matter here.
Okay.
How is digital technology actually changing research?
So they talk about this in two main ways. The first is what they call digital as instrumentation,
Instrumentation.
which basically means using digital tools to collect and analyze data.
So like using a computer to collect data about something.
So think about things like online surveys or tracking online behavior or even analyzing these massive data sets.
Ooh, this is the big data revolution everyone's talking about.
It is, but they're careful to point out that big data isn't a magic bullet.
Right. I was just thinking about that. Remember Google flu trends?
Oh, yeah?
That was a big one.
Everyone thought that was going to be revolutionary.
Yeah, they thought they could predict flu outbreaks just by what people were searching on Google.
Exactly.
But it turned out to be, totally wrong.
Well, it was more about the media coverage than actual flu cases.
Oh, right.
So they were measuring the wrong thing.
Yeah. And there was that whole thing with Twitter sentiment analysis to try to predict the stock market.
Yeah, that was a big flop, too.
Yeah.
Didn't quite work out as planned.
So big data, maybe a little overblown.
Maybe, but I think the key takeaway here is that it's not just about the size of the data, it's about how you use it.
Right. The quality of the data matters, too.
Yeah. And they argue that the real potential of digital research lies in how digital tools are being used by everyday researchers to ask new questions and explore new frontiers.
So not just like Google and Wall Street, but like everyday people.
Exactly.
Cool.
So think about how you could use these tools.
That's a great point. It kind of democratizes research in a way.
Totally. Puts the power in the hands of anyone with a computer.
Exactly.
And that brings us to the second way digital is changing research, which is digital as an object of study.
Oh, okay. So instead of just using digital tools to study other things, we're actually studying the internet itself.
Precisely. And the internet is this vast, complex, ever-evolving thing, and it's creating all sorts of new things that we need to understand.
Yeah, like what kind of things?
Well, things like online communities or digital identity or new forms of political action, even like, the very nature of truth and reality in a digital age.
Right. It's like a whole new world out there.
It is.
And it's changing all the time.
Exactly. So it's like, how do we even begin to study this thing?
Yeah. Is it just another place to study existing questions?
We're right.
Or is it like something totally unique?
Yeah. Like, does it demand new approaches, new ways of thinking?
Wow. It's almost like a philosophical question at this point.
It is. And this leads to some really interesting discussions about the internet's impact on society, on politics, even on our understanding of what it means to be human.
Oh, man. This is heavy stuff.
It is.
Already got me thinking about the internet in a whole new way. But before we move on, I want to go back to that digital as instrumentation idea for a sec. I'm still kind of grappling with this whole big data thing. We talked about how some of those early attempts to use big data to predict things didn't really pan out. But I'm curious,
What the real potential is.
yeah,
How do we avoid falling into those same traps?
exactly. I mean, there's got to be some value in all that data, right?
Yeah.
How do we separate the hype from the reality?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar
Yeah,
question.
right.
And they talk about this challenge they call the experimenter's regress.
Oh, here we go. This is where it gets interesting. What's that?
Well, so imagine you're using this new tool or method and you get these surprising results.
Okay.
But how do you know if those results are because you made some amazing discovery,
Right.
or if it's because the tool just didn't work right?
Oh, so is it a revolutionary finding or did we just break something?
Exactly. And this gets to the heart of the relationship between theory and evidence.
Oh, I see.
How do we know what to trust when the tools themselves are so new and untested?
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's like we're trying to navigate this uncharted territory with a compass that might be broken.
Yeah.
How do we even know where we're going?
Right.
Yeah.
And so they argue that we need to be much more critical of our methods,
Okay.
more aware of the assumptions that are built into the tools that we're using.
So we need to understand the tools as well as we understand the data.
All right. And understand that our choice of method is actually shaping the knowledge that we produce.
Wait, are you saying that our tools are influencing the questions we ask?
Absolutely.
Whoa.
The very act of choosing a method, whether it's an online survey or a social media analysis or even like a virtual ethnography,
Right.
you're already making decisions about what you're going to find.
It's all connected.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Wow, that's a really mind-blowing thought.
Mhm.
So it's not just about using the right tool for the job. It's about understanding how the tool itself is shaping our understanding of the job.
Totally.
Makes you wonder.
Makes you wonder about all the assumptions that are baked into the digital tools we use every day.
Yeah.
And how those assumptions might be shaping our understanding of the world.
Yeah, and how can we even become aware of those assumptions,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
It's like we're swimming in this sea of information and we don't even know which way is up.
Right. And how can we be more critical of the information that we're consuming online?
Oh, man, this is getting deep.
It is. But that's what makes digital research so fascinating.
Right.
And so important.
Yeah.
It's not just about studying the internet. It's about using the internet as a lens to examine our own assumptions, our own methods, and ultimately ourselves.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of transparency.
Yeah.
The two main ways digital is changing research
Mm-hmm.
and the challenges of navigating these new tools and methods.
Right.
But there's still so much to unpack.
Oh, yeah, we're just getting started.
I'm really curious to hear more about those examples of how digital is transforming traditional research methods.
Oh, yeah, like history and anthropology.
Yeah. How do those even work in a digital world?
I think you'll find those examples super interesting.
Yeah.
They really bring these abstract ideas to life.
Okay, awesome. Should we dive into those next?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we're back and ready to dive into those examples you were talking about.
Yes.
Those concrete examples of how digital is changing traditional research methods.
Right.
I'm excited to see how these abstract ideas actually play out in the real world.
Well, get ready to have your mind blown because
Oh boy.
Sandvig and Hargittai, they give us some really cool case studies in this article.
Awesome. Hit me with your best example.
Okay, so imagine you're a historian and you're trying to piece together the history of, say, Flash programming.
Flash programming. Now that's a blast from the past.
I know, right?
Remember those annoying banner ads
Oh, yeah.
and those websites that were all Flash animations?
Yeah.
It's like a digital relic from a bygone era.
Yeah. It is. But, it was a huge part of the internet for a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
And Elizabeth Ankerson, who's one of the researchers featured in the article,
Okay.
she's actually using it as a lens to examine how the internet has changed what an archive even means.
Wait, what? How can a programming language change our understanding of an archive?
Right.
I thought archives were like those dusty old buildings full of documents and artifacts.
That's the traditional view.
Right.
But the internet has created this massive decentralized digital archive where things are constantly being created, shared, modified, and sometimes even disappearing.
Oh, wow.
Without a trace.
So it's like a living, breathing archive
Yeah.
that's constantly evolving and changing.
Exactly. And that makes it super challenging to study something like the history of Flash.
Yeah.
You can't just go to a library and pull out a file labeled The History of Flash Programming.
Right. You can't just Google it.
You can't just Google it. You have to become like a digital detective, piecing together this story from scattered bits of code, online forums, personal websites.
It's a whole different ballgame.
It is.
Wow. That's a challenge.
And that's exactly what Ankerson had to do.
Yeah.
She had to figure out new ways to locate and analyze these digital artifacts to figure out how they fit together to make sense of the bigger picture.
So it's not just about the content of the archive.
Right.
It's about the way we access it and interact with it.
Totally. The internet has fundamentally changed the nature of historical research.
Huh.
Historians have to become way more tech savvy, way more adaptable, more creative in their methods.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So it's like the internet is opening up new frontiers,
Right.
not just for scientists and technologists,
Right.
but for historians as well.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
And it's not just history.
Yeah.
Ethnography, which is this idea of immersing yourself in a particular culture or community,
Okay.
that's also undergoing a massive transformation thanks to the internet.
Okay, that one I can kind of wrap my head around. Studying online communities is obviously different from studying a traditional village in the Amazon.
Right. It's like you're not going to be, trekking through the jungle.
Yeah, exactly.
To do your real...
trekking through the internet.
Yeah. And Sandvig and Hargittai, they highlight this really interesting example of an anthropologist named Tom Bolstorff.
Okay.
Who did an ethnography of Second Life.
Second Life. Now, that's another one.
I know.
I remember when that was all the rage. It was like a virtual world.
Yeah. Where people could create avatars and kind of live out their fantasies.
Right. Build houses and get married.
Exactly. And so Bolstorff argued that he was doing normal anthropological methods, but the fact that he was studying a virtual world just changed everything.
Yeah, of course it did. How do you even do field work when your field site is a computer simulation?
Right. How do you observe and interact with people? How do you build relationships? How do you understand the cultural norms and values of this digital space?
Yeah, and are there even ethical considerations that are specific to studying people in virtual worlds?
Absolutely.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, people in virtual worlds often use avatars and pseudonyms.
Oh, yeah.
So it can be really hard to ensure informed consent.
Right, because you don't even know who you're talking to.
Exactly. And you also have to be super careful about protecting people's privacy, especially because their digital lives can be so intertwined with their offline lives.
Right. It's all blurred.
Yeah, it's all blurred.
So it's like a whole new set of challenges for ethnographers.
It is.
But it's so fascinating. I mean, you have this researcher using these traditional anthropological methods to study this completely new and strange digital world.
I know.
It's like anthropology meets science fiction.
Right. And it raises all sorts of questions about what it means to be human in a digital age.
Yeah, what's the relationship between our online and offline identities? How do we form communities and build relationships in virtual spaces?
Yeah.
What are the ethical implications of studying people in these environments?
Huge questions.
Yeah, and these are questions that we're all grappling with in a way, right?
Totally.
As the internet becomes more and more integrated into our lives, these lines between the virtual and the real are just becoming more and more blurred.
Exactly. And that's what makes digital research so relevant and so urgent and so exciting. It's not just about studying the internet. It's about using the internet as a tool to understand ourselves and the world around us.
In new ways.
In these new and profound ways.
Yeah, that's the internet. It's this giant social experiment that we're all participating in.
Totally. And researchers like Ankerson and Bolstorff, they're showing us how we can use the tool and methods of these traditional disciplines to make sense of this new digital reality.
Okay, so these are just two examples, but I can already see how digital is having this like ripple effect across the entire research landscape. It's not just changing what we study, it's changing how we study it.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to one of Sandvig and Hargittai's main points. This need for a more critical and reflexive approach to research in a digital age.
Okay.
We have to be aware of the assumptions that are built into our tools and methods. We need to be transparent about our processes, our limitations,
Yeah.
and be willing to embrace new ways of thinking and doing research.
So it's about being adaptable, creative, and open to new possibilities.
Yeah.
It's about like embracing the messiness and the complexity of the digital age and using it to kind of push the boundaries of knowledge.
Well said.
Thank you. And speaking of pushing boundaries, you mentioned there's this one final point from Sandvig and Hargittai that you think is particularly thought-provoking.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Something about the assumptions baked into the digital tools we use every day.
Ooh, yeah, that's a juicy one.
Yeah, let's save that for the grand finale. I'm ready to have my mind blown one last time. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into digital research.
Yes.
And I'm still thinking about those examples of how researchers are like using these digital tools and perspectives to like shake things up in fields like history and anthropology.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's clear that this isn't just like a niche area of study.
Right.
It's influencing how we think about knowledge, like across the board.
Yeah, it really is about a shift in mindset. Like,
Yeah.
we can't just keep doing things the way we've always done them.
Right, we have to adapt.
We have to adapt to the digital age. Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of adapting, you mentioned there's this like one final point from Sandvig and Hargittai
Oh, yeah.
that really gets to the heart of this shift. Something about the assumptions that are baked into the digital tools we use every day.
Right. They kind of leave us with this really thought-provoking question.
Okay.
What assumptions are shaping our understanding of the world through the digital tools that we use?
Ooh, that does send a little shiver down my spine.
Right.
It's so easy to just like passively consume information online without really thinking about the forces behind it. you know?
Yeah. It's like we're surrounded by these invisible algorithms
Right.
and filters that are shaping our online experience. The social media feeds that we scroll through, the search results, we see even the news articles that pop up on our screens. They're all curated by these complex systems that we often don't fully understand.
It's like we're living in these like personalized echo chambers.
Yeah.
You know, we might think we're getting this like broad view of the world, but in reality, we're often just seeing this like narrow slice that's been tailored to our preferences and our biases.
Exactly. And that can have some real-world consequences.
Yeah, like what?
Well, it can reinforce existing prejudices.
Right.
It can limit our exposure to diverse viewpoints. It can even make us more susceptible to misinformation and propaganda.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like it's so easy to fall down those rabbit holes online.
Right. Think about how easy it is to get caught in a filter bubble where you're only seeing information that confirms your existing beliefs.
Okay, now I'm starting to feel a little paranoid.
Right.
But seriously, you're right. We can't just blindly trust the information that's being fed to us through these digital channels.
Yeah, we have to be more critical,
Okay.
more discerning, more aware of the forces at play.
So how do we do that? Like, where do we even start?
Well, I think that's where digital literacy comes in.
Digital literacy.
Yeah, it's not just about knowing how to use the technology.
Okay.
It's about understanding how that technology is being used to shape our perceptions
Right.
and influence our behavior.
So it's like being aware of those algorithms, questioning those filters,
Yeah,
and recognizing that there's always more to the story than what's being presented to us on our screens.
exactly. It's about being like an active participant in the digital world,
Okay.
not just a passive consumer.
I like that. Be an active participant.
Okay, well, this has been a real eye-opener. I feel like I've gained this like whole new appreciation for the complexities of digital research and like the challenges we all face
Yeah.
in navigating this digital age.
It's a constantly evolving landscape.
Yeah.
But I think Sandvig and Hargittai have given us some really valuable tools for thinking critically about this digital world and the role it plays in shaping our understanding of knowledge.
For sure. They've definitely given us a lot to ponder.
They have.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's like the one key takeaway you hope our listeners will walk away with?
I think the most important message is that digital research isn't just about studying the internet.
Okay.
It's about using the internet as a lens to examine our assumptions,
Yeah.
our methods,
Right.
and ultimately ourselves.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. It's about recognizing that this digital revolution isn't just a technological shift.
Right.
It's a cultural, social, and intellectual shift that's transforming the way we live, the way we work, and the way we think. Beautifully said. So to all our listeners out there, as you go about your day, interacting with your devices, scrolling through your feeds, navigating this digital landscape, just take a moment to consider the forces that are shaping your experience.
Yeah.
Question the algorithms, challenge the biases,
Yes.
and never stop exploring this vast and ever-changing world of digital knowledge.
And remember, knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
But in the digital age, knowing how that knowledge is produced, how it's filtered, and how it's presented to us is even more powerful.
That's our deep dive for today. We hope you enjoyed this journey into the fascinating world of digital research.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Until next time, keep diving deep, keep asking questions, and keep your minds open to the endless possibilities of the digital age.